start. Okay, we are in the middle of Perek Kaf Hey. We started this last time. We did just a little bit of it. It's not a long Perek. We're discussing Knias Hayira, how to acquire Yira. Now we spoke about, of course, different levels of Yira. The Yira Onesh, which is a very low level, just fear of punishment, and the higher level that we're really discussing is Yira Sachit, and the fear of what a sin does to us and what it does to Kavod Shemayim Hashem. And he says, "V'kevan sheisbar lo shebachol makom shahu, hu omed lefnei shechina so yisparach." Now, a person at all times should be thinking the fact that he's standing before Hashem. As then, if he has this thought in his mind, then he's going to have the yira and the trepidation, and he's going to make sure to not stumble in his actions. Because it wouldn't be proper for the exalted honor of Hashem for him to mess up and for him to sin. In general, certainly a very, very, very important eitzah to try not sin is think about Hashem. And what we're going to see tonight is what happens when if a person isn't thinking about that, right? How much more a person is susceptible to messing up when a person doesn't have Hashem on his mind, when a person's not conscious about Hashem. And I mean, if we think about it in a more extreme way, take a person who's not religious at all. When you have someone who's not religious, they literally do whatever they want, right? The only thing that's keeping them in check are the laws of the country, right? But if it's not a law, so a person could do anything. They could sleep with whoever they want, whenever they want. They eat whatever they want. They act, they drink, they smoke, they'll curse, right? They can do anything, right? And the reason I'll say they do anything, and it's because they don't have Hashem on their mind. And the other extreme is a person who is a religious person, who does think about Hashem on his mind, who does think about Torah mitzvahs, and what's important, that person keeps themselves much more in check. That person is much more conscious to not do any of those things. So he continues, he says, "V'hu ma'asha amru," and this is what it says in Pirkei Avos, Parak Beis, Mishnah Aleph, "Da ma'ala mimcha," you should know what's above you. Ayin Rabba Uzen Shamas, right? Hashem sees everything. Hashem hears everything. Chol ma'asecha b'sefer nechtabed. All our actions are written down. And it's important to note, I mentioned this once before. He elaborates on it here in the footnote, but that the Chavetz Chaim has said, I brought it up in one aspect, but just in general, the advancements of technology are here to enhance and make a tangible presence and tangible understanding of this idea of growing in our Yiras Shamayim. Because we might think prior to, let's say, what he discusses, like the telescope, and when it comes to cameras and pictures, and the last thing, there was one more thing, I believe, and the telephone. So prior to those things, it's hard to imagine how we could think of this Mishnah and really understand that doesn't mean that Hashem hears everything. Hashem sees everything. Everything is written down. Everything's going to be before us. So when you have a telescope, so there are people who could be here and they can mamish see into the heavens. And we're able to do that nowadays. The fact HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the heavens, how could he see me? How does he see what's going on? Hashem mamish could see everything, right? And if you have the fact that a person could make a phone call and speak to someone across the world, wow, you could hear something from so far away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can mamish hear everything going on. Every single thing that goes on in the world, Hashem hears. The last thing of the fact that our actions are written down, Hashem knows and sees everything that happens. So we could take a picture, we could freeze a frame. Now, certainly with video, the fact that you could literally see something in the past and you could show the footage, and we could probably, in theory, may see our exact footage of the positive and negative actions that we did in life. And this is there for us to have a real, like I said, a tangible understanding of these concepts. So That's what the Ramchal understands from this Mishnah. Kikevan shashkachas kadosh baruch hu al kol davar, that the fact that Hashem is overseeing every individual, every matter. V'hu kol, Hashem sees it all. V'shomea kol, and hears it all. V'adai kol ha'masim yu oisim rosham. For sure, every action has an impact. And it's written down, basically, whether for good, whether to give you as chus or to incriminate you, l'chova. And it's interesting because he says this Mishnah. I think the more classic interpretation of this Mishnah is like, you could be in big trouble, realize Hashem's watching, Hashem's listening. He takes it in a different way. His point is that imagine if like the CEO of your company is standing by your desk watching you work. What does that show you for your work? It shows you, wow, this work is pretty important. This work is chashuv. And the fact that Hashem is watching us at all times and hears everything, it gives us, it shows that our actions have a certain impact, that our actions are so important. Look at what we could do. It must be, if Hashem's coming to me to see what I'm doing, it must be that these actions that I'm doing really can make an impact. That's what he says. V'amnam, hadavar hazeh eino mitztaer hitiv b'seichel adam. Because basically, unfortunately, like this isn't always, these good ideas to think about aren't always on a person's mind. The only way they're going to be on a person's mind is by constantly thinking about it and meditating basically over these ideas. Because since these things are difficult for our senses to understand, that our mind could only really envision it and think about this when we really give it our energy. And it's interesting, it's like he wrote that line, like we can't even grasp these ideas. He wrote that in the 1700s. And like I said, Chayes Chaim says, like nowadays the technology, we actually can understand this even better and have a better understanding for this. And probably meaning Hashem did it because we're a lower generation. We need those tools. We need those figurative measures to be able to relate back to this. Yasur hatzir v'menu benakel lo yasmin alav harbe. And even after a person could conceptualize this, this is going to, basically it's going to fade. And you're not going to really have the proper yira if you're not focusing on it, yasmid alav harbe, if you're not really thinking about it constantly. Right? It's similar to like working on Lashon Hara. If a person wants to stop speaking Lashon Hara, it's not enough to say, I want to stop speaking Lashon Hara. The person has to really be conscious of not speaking Lashon Hara. You should learn about it. You could discuss it. You could think about it throughout the day. And then you'll really be more cognizant of not speaking Lashon Hara. If someone just makes one statement, I don't want to speak Lashon Hara. It's great, but what are you going to do about it? Right? So I think it's a similar type of thing. And the more you think about it, the greater you are, the greater the chance to be on the path to acquire this midah of yira and to be in a constant state of yira. Then obviously the opposite is also true. That the more a person is absent-minded, the more a person is not focusing, is not thinking about this. So who mafsid agadol shalah? Then he has a great loss. He's losing out on the proper yira he should have. Basically, this could be whether it's by accident in a certain sense because he's busy, he just can't think, he's not thinking about this now, or focusing on other things, or beraton, maybe deliberately he's just not thinking about it. But whatever, either way, the hesach hadas, the lapse of awareness of the Yirah Shamayim, thinking about Hashem and Hashem's listening, Hashem watches me. So that's going to be, you're going to be mavata, you're going to basically lose out and on your constant level of Yirah Shamayim. Humashet tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu El HaMelech. That is why Hashem commands a king in Sefer Devarim in Parakid Zayin. He says, "V'haisa imo b'karabo kol yimei chayav l'man yilmad yiras Hashem l'ukav." Hashem commands a king that at all times a king has to have a Torah on him, and in order to learn from it, why? Why should he have a Torah on him at all times? Why should he learn from this Torah at all times? The Yiras Hashem l'ukav, right? To be God-fearing. What's the way that Yira will come to a person if he's learning Torah and he's focused on this and he doesn't have a hefsek? And I want to focus on the fact that it says the man yilmad Yira, that you should work on attaining, basically learn to attain Yira. He says the lo amar leman Yira. It doesn't just say in order that you fear. Allah, rather, lefisha ein hayira zos mesegas beteva. It says because Yira Shemayim is not something natural, right? The one thing we've learned from the Sefer is that you have to work, right? Any midah, right? A person might have a certain netiya. You might gravitate and have a natural inclination towards certain midos, right? A person might have a certain general disposition towards kindness or whatever it may be, right? So if a person might be more humble naturally, but they still have to work on their humility, right? Nothing really comes totally natural. And especially Yer Shamayim, he says, literally the Torah says, Aman Yilma the Yira. You have to learn to have Yer Shamayim. It doesn't say the Man Yira in order that you fear Hashem. It's not something that's natural. On the contrary. It is distant from you because of the physical nature that we're in, right? I think some of what he's saying also is that this idea is very conceptual. It's in the mind, and we're physical people. And part of this, what he's saying also, is like physicality kind of removes us from spirituality. And we're not going to be able to acquire it unless we really toil in and learn about this. And the way we're going to learn about this and attain this is only through a lot of toil and contemplation of Torah, without breaking, without breaks. A person should think about this constantly. Right? Like he's paraphrasing. It's not really paraphrase, but he's saying the line in a different way, right? And Shema, right? So learn it, right? Right? So it says here, when should you think about this stuff? At all times, right? Lying down, sitting up, standing, like waking up, walking, right? All times. Until it's like truly and perfectly in your mind. The Hainu. You find Hashem everywhere, like you're thinking about Hashem constantly. And you know that Hashem is mash before you at all times. And then you're going to come and have the true fear, Yirah Shamayim. As he concludes the parak, this is what David HaMelech was davening for when he said until in parak Hevav, pasuk Yud Aleph, Horeini Hashem darkecha. Hashem, show me your ways, teach me your ways. Ahalech b'mitecha. I want to follow your path in truthfulness and as best I can in purity. Yached levavi liyirah shemecha. I want to dedicate my heart. I want to have this one true goal in my heart to have fear for your name. And the footnote quote here, important idea that the Rabbi, when it comes to the Shulchan Aruch, the Rabbi's opening comment to all of Shulchan Aruch, the Orach Chaim, is Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samaj. Is the pasuk he says, first and foremost, think about that you're constantly in front of Hashem. And he probably opens with that, right? Some of it is, right? Like, he said, Reishis Chacham Yiras Hashem, right? So you have to, Reishis Chacham Yiras, the beginning of Chacham is Yiras Hashem. You have to start with Yira. You have to start with these ideas. But some of it also, right? You're writing a book of halacha. Who's going to be keeping halacha? Why do we keep halacha? How are we going to make sure that we keep halacha to the utmost ability and to the utmost degree? How are we going to do that? By realizing that Hashem's always in front of us. We're constantly in front of Hashem. That could be where the Ramah started. Shivti Hashem lenegdi samin. So with that, we're going to conclude the second to last parak, and we're going to be learning as Hashem next week, starting the last parak, which is the midah of kedusha.